Hi everyone, and welcome back to the fourth episode here on Podcast You. I know I've been coming back so late, like it's taking me around 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks to actually upload a new episode here on my podcast. I am so sorry, but please know that I'm the type of person that if I start something, I want to, do it till the end. And, I just want to make sure that when I start something, I will really start instead of just letting it go away so easily. And podcast is something that I, really want to keep up with, even if it takes 3-4 weeks for me to upload another episode. But, what are you guys like? What kind of type are you guys in terms of, starting something? Do you usually start something, but it takes you so long to actually, keep that going? Or you actually make that happen and long last till the very end? Or do you not even start? Or it takes so long for you to start something? There are different types of people. For me, I'm the type of person who usually takes... I'm so sorry for the noise in the back, by the way. For me, I'm the type of person who takes very long for me to actually, make the decision of starting something. But as much as it takes a long time for me to begin, I actually pull it all throughout. Or at least I try my best to. Okay, that was a very long intro to get more deeply into today's episode. So today's episode is actually going to be on living alone in Seoul. Living alone in Seoul. Yep, that is going to be what the episode is all about. And I have also made a post on Podcast U's Instagram page for you guys to ask me anything if you guys are curious on living alone life in Seoul, to be specific, or living alone life in general. So yeah, I think I am going to answer your questions one by one while talking about my struggles while living alone here in Seoul. Okay, so to give you a brief background, I've actually started living alone not so long ago. I moved into my house right now in August, early August, and it's December now, so it's been around 5 months since I've been living alone in Seoul. But then I went independent. I became independent from my parents, financially, from the very start of this year. So from the start of this year, I started living with my roommate, Sylvia. It was actually her house, but then I just joined it. I just moved in her house as a roommate, and we lived together for around 7 months until I moved out and became fully, completely independent. And basically a new life began after I moved out. So yeah, I think I'm gonna talk about my struggles, or I guess the joys of my life. It's more on the struggles, by the way. I think for those who are listening to this who are living alone might be able to, kind of sympathize to what I'm talking about. And for those who are dreaming to live alone could, get some idea on what it's like to be living alone. Oh, and there might be some people who actually moved back with their families or friends or partners after a long time of living alone. So I'm pretty sure there are different types of people watching this and listening to this. So please let me know how you guys thought of this episode later at the very end. Okay, so let's dig in right away. First and foremost, let me give you a brief information on where I'm living also. So, okay, it's a given. Seoul. It's Seoul. And, Seoul is a very big city. There are like different districts in Seoul. I think there are more than like 15 districts here in Seoul. So, and in every district, there are a lot of like people living in there. So, I mean, yeah, like there are 50 million people in Korea. 50 million. And 1/5 of the Korea's population lives in Seoul. So Seoul is, I would say, one of the most dense or area with the highest density in the world. One of the most, I think. So yeah, getting a house in Seoul is actually easier than it may look, but it's difficult to find a house with a good deal. It's usually, if the location is good, when I say the location is good, that means it's near to the subway or bus station. Usually subway, yeah, because subway transportation is very nicely or very organized in Korea. It's operated in a very convenient way, but bus as well. So people would call that 역세권, which means your house is near the stations. So that would be one of the factors of a good house, good location near to the station. And another factor would be, I guess, how old the house is. Yeah, like if it's a very old house, maybe it could be a little cheaper, but usually there's not much difference. Like my office stall, I'm living in a newly built office stall, but that doesn't really mean that it's much more expensive than older office stalls. It usually really, really depends. What else? Yeah, I mean, there are different types of housings in Korea, in Seoul. So usually there are the apartments, and apartments we would refer to apartment villages, where in one village, yeah, it's like a little town, apartment town, and there are exactly the same looking apartments, and there would be an entrance for a parking spot, so it's usually really big, and usually only families live there. People who live with their family. I mean, people who live alone could live there too, but usually. So I used to live in an apartment outside of Seoul when I was living in Korea like 10 years ago. Okay, yeah, guys, I'm so sorry for the noise. I will get to this, this noise coming in later. Yeah, and that's the apartment. And we also have the office stalls, which is a place where I'm living in. And it's supposed to be a combination of an office plus a hotel. So it's got a lot of different facilities already in the room. Usually like the refrigerator, laundry machine, what else? And storage, like cabinets. Those are all included in an office stall. So that's why they will call it a full option. So there's a saying that if you're living in an office stall or if you're getting an office stall, all you have to do is bring your body and that's it. Yeah, you don't have to bring in anything because everything's there already. Yeah, that's just a saying, highlighting how convenient it is to live in an office stall. And you could also use office stalls as a office instead of a house. So some people really do get housed as an office and work there. That could be another way. And and there's also this thing called one room, which is usually like an apartment building, like an office stall, but it's just one room. So mine would be a one room office stall because it's just one room. It's not 2 rooms, it's not 3 rooms, it's a 1 room. So it's like a studio type apartment in that would be the easiest way for you to understand the concept of this place. Yeah, it's a studio apartment. There are also villa type of houses. It's like a not so high building, usually up to fifth floor building, and villas are usually old. It's old, but some of the most expensive villas are. It's almost like a. How do I explain this? It's like a house, like a normal house, like a separate house building, but you just divide the floors. Yeah, and usually villas are not full option. You need to get your own refrigerator, your own air condition, everything. Yeah, villas, the newly built, good looking villas in, expensive areas in Seoul could be regarded as the fanciest living environment. But there are also villas that are really, really old, that gives the really old Seoul vibes. And those would be, I guess, the most affordable houses you can find here in Seoul. Yeah. And lastly, the house, an actual house in an actual village. Like either first floor or usually second floor houses. Those are very, very uncommon in Korea because Korea is very small. It's very small. That's why there are a lot of buildings in Korea. And also why apartment became a thing here. So, yeah, I don't really know that many people. I probably don't know anyone who lives in a house in Korea. Usually, it's all in an apartment. Oh, my grandma. Yeah, well, in the countryside. Yeah, but we're talking about Seoul. So in Seoul, it's very, very extremely rare to find a house like that. The house we're all imagining when we say house. So yeah, for those who don't know, my house is in Seoul and the location is actually pretty good. I have all the main facilities, like main attractions, quite near my house. The stations are very near. So it's very convenient, but as you can hear from the background, it's right beside a road. It's right beside a highway. Yeah, so yeah, like it's very hard because it's very noisy at night. I hear ambulance because there are lots of hospitals around my place. Yeah, I hear ambulance at least like 5 times a day. And yeah, it's been really tough. Very, very, very tough. So, and it's also bright at nights just because it's by the road. So yeah, I don't think I'll be living in this place for that long. But in terms of the structure, as I said, it's a newly built office though. So it's very clean and location-wise, very, very great as well. So that my house monthly rent is $800 a month. Yep. And there is this thing called 관리비, which means maintenance fee that you have to pay on a monthly basis as well. That includes electricity, water bills, gas, and everything. That's about, for me, it depends on how much, water and electricity you use. But for me, it's around $120 a month. Yeah. So all in all, I do pay around $950 a month. It depends every month, but yeah, that's the range. So I would say it's a little bit on the expensive side. I could have gotten a better house with a better option, or I could have gotten a more affordable house, but maybe, yeah, maybe not as clean as this, not as near as this to the station. But yeah, it took me really fast to get this house. Usually you would go on a house hunting in Seoul for days, looking into like at least 5 different houses. But then in my case, this was the very first house that I visited in a house hunting, and I just went on with the contract right away. I don't know why I was in such a hurry. Yeah. Anyways, let's now move on to living alone in Seoul. There are lots of, I guess, aesthetic vlogs out there of many different YouTubers living in Seoul alone, like the Living Alone Diaries that, many famous YouTubers like Michelle Choi started. And I guess from the perspective of a foreigner, it could look very romantic, like, oh my god, the city vibes, aesthetic and everything, but I guess the reality could be a little different. I mean, Korean houses, it definitely has a certain vibe, like a distinct vibe, like a unique aesthetic. But at the same time, depending on the location, depending on the condition of the house, it can feel a bit lonely almost. Like you could feel empty because first of all, like with me, I don't really see any greens around me. So yeah, it's like the gray view, like the gray roads, the gray buildings, the gray cars. Okay, cars have different colors, but usually it's like white, black, or gray. So yeah, and everything's square, and you know how the structure of the house really matters. When you are stuck in a place with sharp edges, like squarey places, like a squarey building, squarey, is that even a word? But yeah, square building, square room structure, square table, square refrigerator, square everything, and you personally become more edgy. Yeah, but if you're in a space with a rounder edges, not sharp edges, that it also affects you in a way that's, I guess, more warm, if that makes sense. But I really felt that by going to different architecture, like famous architecture, when I was traveling. I really got to learn about how the structure and shape of the building affect you. Like it really does. And many places in Seoul, it looks very similar. Many offices or apartments, it has exactly the same structure. I'm not even kidding, guys. All the apartments usually look exactly the same. So even if I go to a friend's house who lives in an apartment, it feels like my home that I used to live in years ago, which was not even in Seoul. So that explains how most houses, most building, it looks pretty similar. Yeah, actually that's very weird. I mean, not weird, but interesting now that I think about it. Because, I also used to live in the Philippines, and mostly all the houses were very unique. Like, it was all different. And the same goes for the States, I would say. Yeah. So, now let's get into the actual story time. I don't know. Living alone struggles. Not struggles, living alone stories. So, the first question I got is, what's the most difficult thing you've ever encountered since you started living alone? That's a great question. Okay, the most difficult thing. Okay, so you guys have to know that I did not start living alone from living with my parents to completely being by myself. So I used to live with a roommate, and then I transitioned to living completely alone. And I think that makes a big difference, because if I were to live alone, go independent from my parents' care to me alone, I think I would have struggled a lot more. Yeah. But then, since I already got the hang of what it feels like to live without my parents around me, it was easier for me to adjust in living alone. But then there's one thing that I cannot adjust. I mean, I could adjust, but that's hard for me while living alone, from living with a roommate, is about food. Big time. I feel so bad for myself for having the worst eating habits. So, usually when I was living with my parents, sometimes my mom would cook for me. And when I was living in the Philippines, we had a cook in the house who would cook for us. And many times as well, I would cook for the family. So I was kind of used to cooking for someone and myself. Like when I was living with my family here in Korea, I cooked a lot. Like many times I cooked for my family and I enjoyed it because I love cooking. I love it when, my loved ones enjoy the food I make. It's like one of the biggest joys of my life, one of the things I enjoy so much. One time I wanted to be a cook, I wanted to be a chef because of how much I love to cook for other people. And the same went for when I was living with my roommate, Sylvia. I would cook mostly. Like she barely cooked and I would be the one to cook most of the time, or sometimes we would cook together and I was happy to cook for her. Of course, I'm eating the food that I cook, but I was happy to, just knowing that, okay, so I'm going to be cooking this particular dish and she's going to eat it and we're going to eat it together. All these thoughts in the process, it makes me so happy and it's very fulfilling. But then ever since I became completely independent, I cook just for myself. And this idea, I have to love myself. So, the process of cooking, even if it's just for myself, has to be very happy and enjoyable. But then, what I started to think is that I'm so lazy to cook for myself. Like, I'm not promoting self-hate or anything. But then, the time that I spent on cooking, buying the ingredients and cooking the dish to actually serving it to eating to dishwashing, all these process, if it's just for myself, it's a pity, it's a waste of effort and time. And I know that that's not true and I should not think in this way. I should never, indeed. But I unconsciously do, which is a really unhealthy habit I have. So I still do cook at home, but I never cook any solid dish unless someone's here in my house. If it's just for myself, I just don't cook. I wouldn't call it cooking. I wouldn't call just chopping some carrots or heating up some food as cooking. Yeah, that doesn't count as cooking. So, yeah, even if I love cooking, I haven't been cooking that much. And I just feel bad for myself for eating so much instant or processed food. I've been ordering a lot of delivery food. And actually, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. So, I don't know if you might be aware, but Seoul or Korea in general has a delivery culture on another level. In terms of product delivery, there's this company that's kind of monopolizing the market or dominating the market, which is called Coupang. I don't know anyone who does not use Coupang around me. So that's how famous it is. And Coupang has implemented this system called Rocket Delivery, which means you pay a membership fee of $3 a month and you can get products that is labeled as rocket shipping within 8 hours. So if you order by the end of the day before 12, it comes the next day. And if you order by like before 5 p.m. or something, it comes the next day in the early morning, like at 6 a.m. Yeah, so that's how it works. So it's crazy, actually, that delivery system. It's not only about getting products. There are also different apps that specializes in different product services. So like food delivery, there are different apps. So the coupon company I was talking about, it has extended its business to food delivery as well. So there's an app called Coupon Eats, and like you can basically track where the delivery man is. So he has or she has a GPS on his or her motorbike or car, or you can even use a bike, and it tracks you real time and it shows you on your app. Yeah, so how the pali culture in Korea, the quickly culture, how many people say Koreans are impatient. I think it kind of comes from this, where you want to track where your food is like real time. So I've been ordering a lot of delivery food, and I am ashamed because it does create lots of trash. But then the policies have changed a lot, so a lot of them use 100% like recyclable materials for that delivery, and they don't give you single-use spoons or chopsticks unless you ask them to. So yeah, before it was automatically they would give you. So yeah, there are little changes happening. It's little, but it's happening surely. And there's another app for grocery shopping called SSG, and I use that too. And this time, again, 1-day delivery is a norm. Yeah, like if it takes more than a day, that's kind of too much. Like, yeah, I feel so bad for myself. It feels like I'm spoiled or something. But it's already a culture here in Korea. So SSG is specialized in grocery shopping, but you can order different stuff in there because it's basically a shopping mall as well. And what I like about it is that you can actually choose the time of when the food comes. So when I do grocery shopping through SSG, I would usually check on the specific time I want to receive the product in the next day, and it will come in the timeline. Yeah, so yeah, that's how it is. So it's been a long time since I went grocery shopping like to an actual mall. Yeah, because for people who live alone, and people who don't have cars, so I rely on transportation or a taxi. It's hard to go grocery shopping because, when you go grocery shopping, you want to buy a lot, like in bulk, right? But it's hard to bring it home if you don't have a car. Or you can take a cab, but you cannot take a cab like every single time you go grocery shopping. So it would be better if it gets delivered. That's why they implemented this kind of system, like everything in delivery in Korea. So, yeah, it kind of shows how a lot of young people, especially the youth, are living alone in Korea, in Seoul. So yeah, it's very interesting now that I actually think about it one by one. And nowadays in SSG, I've been looking at different meal kits. When I was living with my roommate, I was looking at raw like food, like raw potato, raw onions, like that comes in like a whole package in different kilos. Or I would always buy banana and stuff like that. But now that I live alone, if I buy banana, like it takes me like 1 or 2 weeks to finish it, and it goes bad so easily. And when I buy like a bunch of onions, it goes bad also because I don't eat that much at home. I usually go out to eat just because it's more convenient. Oh yeah, and I start to buy like meal kits. There are different meal kits in Korea, or frozen food where you just have to reheat. Or meal kits are it's a thing in Korea where it's like, it's kind of in between frozen food and fresh food. So it's like in a meal kit, there are different ingredients that goes inside a dish. So chopped garlic, chopped onions, and a piece of steak, and you just have to cook it in a way that it was instructed in the instruction. So it's kind of like, it's very easy to cook, and I wouldn't even call that cooking because everything's prepared. Like the sauce is in there. You just have to like mix it, dump it in the pan one by one kind of thing. And I've been, buying a bunch of that. So if you're living in Korea, let me know because I have tried every single meal kits on SSG. And I've tried every single one. So I know what's good and what's bad. Yeah, that's not something that I should be proud of. Yeah, so, and another struggle is that if I order delivery food, right? Let's say if I order the famous fried chicken, it takes me like 3 or 4 days to actually finish the chicken. I feel so bad for myself. Yeah, and I just dump it in the fridge, and later on, it is left eventually. Like I can't finish everything because I even get lazy to heat it up. So yeah, that's what happens, so I feel so bad for myself. But then at least in the mornings, I want to have food at home prepared by me. So now I'm just seeking for utmost convenience. So I'm just ordering, like the staple items that I order on SSG is like yogurt, Greek yogurt, granola, blueberries, bread, maple syrup, egg, sausage, potato, and packed salad. What else? Milk, yeah, cereal. So these easy to prepare breakfast menu, I always have them in the fridge. Or soy milk, orange juice, stuff like that. But I don't really buy raw garlic, raw onions, raw something because it's hard for me to, actually eat them by cooking them one by one and keep them in a fresh and good condition. So that's the hardest thing about living alone for me. Like the hardest thing in terms of food. And I'm very grateful that I am even able to, buy stuff, deliver stuff. But then at the same time, I feel so bad for myself. Like I feel so guilty. So yeah, I should grow a more healthy lifestyle, to actually cook for myself, even if I get lazy, like maybe not every single meal, but at least 2 meals a day I should eat at home. Yeah, that's the hardest part, kind of accepting the fact that I have not so healthy diet. Yeah. Okay, so the next question is there a culture in your country that when you reach that age, a certain age, you should live by yourself? You have to be independent, or there's no such thing. Other people just live alone because they need to because of their work, don't want to be a burden to their family, etc. I hope you know what I mean. Yes, I know what you mean. I'm not used to being independent though, because we Filipinos are family-oriented. But actually, when it comes to family, I don't want to separate with them because I'm crying when they are far from me. So how do you manage being alone? Because me, I cannot. I'm currently with my cousins right now because I'm studying in the city. Although I am with them, sometimes I cry because I miss my family so much. Oh, oh my God. That's a great question. It's a great question. So, in terms of having to move out at a certain age, it depends on the family. But with my family, like I still clearly remember when I was really young. Like I wasn't even a teenager. I was like a kid, as in like a child, like grade 1, grade 2 in elementary. And my dad would tell me that if you reach the age of an adult, which means like 18, you have to go independent and live by yourself. Like that's what he said to my brother and me. So we had this, I don't know, like sense of burden almost that, okay, when we become a certain age, we have to live by ourselves. But of course, like my dad just said that to us because he wants to kind of let us know that it's not like we're gonna, like our parents are gonna be there to do everything for them until we get very old. So yeah, and my brother is still living with my family right now because he is in the country. Although he goes to school in Japan now because of the pandemic, like yeah, but he did used to live with a roommate in Japan. So yeah, like it depends on the family. Like a lot of people I know who are in their early 20s, it's very normal for you to still live with your family. Yeah, even if you go to college or whatever. I haven't seen anyone aside from me who lives by themselves who's a Korean. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm the only one. And mid 20s, a lot of people start to go independent, but it's not common. Maybe it's around like 50-50. Yeah. And late 20s, maybe more and more people start to live alone, but it's not an absolute rule that you should move out at a certain age. In fact, I even know someone who is in his 40s who lives with his parents. So yeah, there are different cases. So yeah, and it's not like a shame to be living with your parents. It's not a shame. It's not an embarrassing thing at all. So as you said, Filipinos are family oriented. So you like stay with your family until you get married or something, or maybe even after you get married. That kind of applies in Korea too. Like family is number one also in Korea. So yeah. And in terms of missing your family, so I am grateful that I don't live far from where my family is. So my family is literally just like one call away. So, I don't feel lonely, but there are times when I miss my family, like when I miss my mom. Right in the iPhone app, like in the widget thingy, you can see who, okay, not who, but like it's like a photo reminder, like 2 years ago this day kind of thing, and it just pops up, and I see a photo of me with my mom, and I suddenly miss my mom. Like that exists, but I don't like cry because I miss them because I can just go to see them. Someone asked, how's the feeling of living alone in Seoul? I can see a lot of Koreans are living alone. I envy how independent they are, but what are the merits and drawbacks of living alone in Seoul? Oh, it's a good question. So I think the merit has to be, I guess, the sense of independence you have. Like you may feel proud of yourself for, okay, I am independent in Seoul because, Seoul is usually regarded as like the most expensive city to live in Korea. But then it depends. Like some areas in Seoul are extremely expensive. Some areas are similar to areas outside of Seoul. So it really depends. I think that's the only thing, the merits. Or if you have work, like if your workplace is in Seoul, in your office, or for me, the reason why I wanted to stay here in Seoul is because usually for my work, like the meetings and stuff, the filming, the shootings, it usually happens in Seoul. So, but it depends. Like I'm not an office worker where I have a certain like area. If you work at a certain building, then you should probably get a house like near your workplace. But as for me, I'm like a freelancer, so yeah, I just want to stay in Seoul as much as possible so it's easier for me. But Seoul is big, so like sometimes it takes 1 hour for me to travel to a place that's within Seoul. Like every Friday, I'm going to the studio, which is 1 hour away. 1 hour, guys, 1 hour. So 2 hours back and forth. Yes. Yeah, like, it's, yeah. And that would be the drawback, actually. That for me, even within Seoul, since Seoul is so big and sometimes it's really traffic during rush hours, and you don't want to get into a subway during rush hours in Korea, like you're gonna be stuck between people. It's tough. Like, what social distancing? Yeah. But it's still very convenient. I love the transportation. So the merits would be those, like the convenience, as I said, the delivery, um, the sense of independence you have. The transport is amazing. Yeah, you have access to many different like famous attractions, and staying near your workplace if your work is in Seoul. But the drawbacks, sometimes going to one end of Seoul to the other end could take up to 2 hours. During rush hours, traffic is crazy. And one thing, I think this is also important, sometimes you feel so empty. I don't know why. You feel so empty. Like, it feels so empty because you see, like, one moment, you see other people, you see the cars passing by. Everyone looks so busy, and you can feel it. Like, they're so busy. Oh my god, everyone's so busy. And everything's square, as I said. Everything's like high-rise buildings. And you suddenly feel so empty. I don't know why. Like, emotionally, it can, like, put you in the worst depression even, I think. Because there is this subconscious burden that you receive, just being in the atmosphere of Seoul, especially the main areas. The pressure that, okay, I have to work harder, I have to work faster, I have to work better than other people. It's not like given to you in a very explicit way, but it is there, and I feel it. But then there are also areas in Seoul where you can go to, like, chill, like the Han River. Han River is like my favorite place, and I live very near Han River. And Han River is actually really long. It passes all throughout Seoul. So yeah, like Han River is just my favorite. Amazing. Okay, I feel like I went off track. Yeah. Okay, so let me pick one more question. Yep. Okay. Oh, this is a witty question. I've seen in K-dramas that usually if you live alone and you're a woman, you should put a man's shoes so other people would not know you're living alone. Does this apply to you? Oh, it's a good question. So Seoul, I would say, is one of the safest cities in the world. Yeah, it's very safe, but then of course you have to be very cautious. Sometimes, right? Obviously, especially at night. And yeah, it was a thing before when you live alone as a girl. You can be a target by some criminals. Yeah, but that's right. Like, they will, pretend that they're living with their boyfriend or, yeah, someone else in the house. But then, like, no one just randomly knocks onto your door or anything. Like, that just doesn't happen. For me, at least. And when it comes to delivery food, when you receive it, like, the delivery man can see the structure of your house, right, in the entrance. But then nowadays, we are going through this, like, what do you call it? Untagged delivery culture, where delivery man places the delivery food or order in front of your house, and then they just, like, either knock on the door or like, it notifies on your delivery app that it came, and they just leave. Yeah. So when the food comes and I open the door, there's no person outside. There's only the delivery. So yeah, I don't put any man's shoes or whatever. But yeah, it's you may do that, yeah, but I don't feel the need to, because yeah, I feel safe, totally safe. So yeah, living alone in Seoul. I know it's many of your dreams to be living here in Seoul, and I really respect it, and I think it's beautiful to have a dream like that, and I hope you experience it yourself and go through all these emotional roller coasters. I feel like today I talked so much about the food. That shows how much I struggle in terms of food. Yeah. Oh, one thing that I do to not feel lonely is having plans. So if you follow me on YouTube, I have like 5 different plants in my house. And I picked the ones that actually grow well, even in this like harsh environment. Like there's no direct sunlight in my house. Only during the sunrise and sunset there's some little bit of sunlight coming in, but the rest of the day, no. So it's a harsh environment for my plants, but I've chose the right plants that, grow well in those environments, so I'm very thankful for them. And even if they're not like living creatures, I mean, they are living creatures, but they're not like they're not animals. So I feel less burdened. Like I don't want to get a pet in a small house, I don't want to stress my pet. Yes, so plants was the way to go for me, because I have something to take care of that actually grows and I can see it growing, and it feels the best. The fact that there's something in my house aside from me and my objects, lifeless objects, I have something to take care of. Just that responsibility kind of gives me this sense of, security, kind of, even while living alone, like emotional security. So I think that's like the best thing I've done after living alone, that I bought plants. And yeah, I love them all so much. Like they're the love of my life at the moment. Yeah, and I feel like this is very interesting, talking about living alone in Seoul, and I wish to do more in the future. I think it was too short. Yeah, but in the future, I will try to talk more about it, because it was very interesting, and I hope it was interesting for you guys too. And yeah, if you have any suggestions on what I should be talking about on my next podcast, please let me know. Follow Podcast U's Instagram to communicate with me on a closer level. Yeah, so thank you so much for listening to today's episode on Podcast U. And I'll see you guys. No, not see. I will talk with you guys, in the next episode. Bye, guys.